A group of my friends and I went to a county haunted house attraction near our town. It was located right at the edge of town and opened every October without fail. It was set up next to the woods, which fit the theme perfectly, and it had 3 different attractions. There was the main haunted house, a corn maze, and a haunted trail that went through the woods. I should probably introduce my friends. There was Rod, James, and Bud. Bud is not his real name, just a nickname everyone calls him. We started with the haunted house, which was pretty well done and had a handful of solid scares. After that, we headed over to the corn maze. At first, it was fairly tame, just a lot of walking and turning through tall rows of corn. That changed quickly once the actors got involved. A man dressed as a terrifying scarecrow suddenly burst out of the corn and screamed at us, which made all of us yell. He immediately started chasing us, and we took off running. I ended up in the back of the group, as usual, with the scarecrow right behind me. Even though it is just an actor doing their job, there is still a natural panic that kicks in when something is chasing you. In the chaos of running through the corn, I somehow lost track of all my friends. It felt like we all scattered in different directions. I eventually lost the scarecrow and made my way back onto one of the dirt paths between the corn rows. That was when things really went downhill. I shouted for my friends, calling their names over and over while taking turn after turn, most of them wrong. None of them answered back. What made it worse was that I did not see a single other group anywhere around me. I had no choice but to keep going alone. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes when I heard movement in the corn directly ahead of me. I slowed down and tried to quietly pass by it, but that did not matter. A hand suddenly shot out from the corn and grabbed my wrist, squeezing it painfully hard. I yelled out in pain, shouting for them to stop because it actually hurt. I was genuinely shocked by how strong the grip was for a paid actor. Then whoever it was tried pulling me into the corn. I could not see their face at all. All I could see was an arm covered by a black coat sleeve and a black glove. I managed to rip my arm free and stepped backward as the person stepped out onto the path. He was wearing a thick winter coat, black jeans, and a plain black face mask. I had no idea what character he was supposed to be, but I yelled at him, telling him to go screw himself, because he had actually hurt me. He suddenly ran straight at me, and instinctively I turned and ran as fast as I could through the corn to get away. I yelled back that I was going to report him, and after a few moments, I lost sight of him. After about 5 minutes of running straight through the corn instead of following the paths, I reached the edge of the maze and went to find an employee. I told one of the employees about the actor, explaining that he used way too much force and actually hurt my wrist. The employee said he was not sure who matched the costume I described, but he told me he would look into it. I thanked him and then checked my phone. I saw I had a missed call from James. I called him back and asked where everyone was. He said they tried looking for me for a bit, then gave up and headed over to the haunted trail in the woods. I told him I would meet them there and hung up. I walked over to the entrance of the trail, where loud Halloween sounds were playing through speakers scattered around. As I stepped into the woods, it felt like I was completely alone, except for my friends somewhere ahead. I tried to catch up to them, but I suddenly stopped when I saw someone standing in the path. It was him again, the guy wearing the coat and black mask. He did not give me any time to react or say a word. He immediately started charging straight at me at full speed. I turned and ran off the path into the woods, thinking it would be easier to lose him there. As I ran, I shouted back that I was calling the police. I was not actually calling them, but I hoped it would scare him off. I kept running deeper into the woods until I no longer heard footsteps behind me. I sat down on a fig tree root to catch my breath. While I was sitting there, I had time to think, and one thought stood out. Did that guy really follow me all the way from the corn maze to this trail? Then I heard footsteps again, and right at that moment my phone started ringing. I quickly silenced it, and the footsteps stopped. I quietly stood up and leaned around the tree to look. Everything looked clear. I started running back toward the main path of the attraction, but almost immediately I spotted him to my right. I muttered to myself that I was done with this. I stopped and yelled that I was suing the place because of him, but he kept running at me anyway. He reached me and shoved me to the ground. I did not see it coming at all. I was completely shocked again. I scrambled back to my feet as fast as I could before he could get on top of me and took off running. He chased me for a bit, but once I reached the path near the entrance of the attraction, he stopped and turned back. I ran straight to the small office shack at the front and asked to speak with the manager. An older man came out, and I told him everything about the guy who had been chasing and attacking me. The manager said they did not have any actors dressed in anything like what I described. He ended up calling the police, and I got my friends to come meet me there. I stayed behind and explained everything to the officers when they arrived. I did not have any visible injuries to show them, but they still filed a report and shut the attraction down for the rest of the night. After that, we all went home. I have not gone to a haunted attraction since then. The year I turned 13, a friend invited me and 2 other friends to spend Halloween night at his house. He lived in a fairly large home just outside our town, and it was an ideal area for trick or treating. We thought it would be fun to head out early so we could collect candy to eat while watching movies later. As the night went on, we reached what felt like the last few houses on our route, and one door was answered by a woman. She was tall and thin, with shoulder-length hair. The inside of her house looked filthy, and the heavy smell of cigarette smoke poured out from behind her. Almost immediately, she told us she had run out of candy. Still, she said she could check to see if she had anything left. After standing there for a few minutes, she returned holding an old brown paper bag filled with candy that looked stale and outdated. We politely declined and told her our ride was waiting, so we needed to leave. Suddenly, she grabbed one of my friends and begged us not to go. He yanked himself free, and she slammed the door shut. We continued on to a few more houses before hearing shouting near the parking lot of the housing complex. Someone was yelling, "They took my child. They took her." It was the same woman. She was pounding on my friend's parents' car, throwing herself against it and striking it with her fists. Neighbors came outside after hearing the noise, and it seemed they recognized her. They apologized to us and claimed it was all a misunderstanding. We rushed into the car, and my friend's mom pulled away. We had barely driven a short distance when the woman ran in front of the car, insisting that one of us was her child. Once again, the neighbors dragged her away. Later that night was when things became truly unsettling. Like most kids at a sleepover, we stayed up late watching horror movies. Without warning, the hallway light turned on. We could see the glow beneath the closed bedroom door. We assumed my friend's parents were about to come in and tell us to go to bed, but no one did. After a moment, I cracked the door open to check. The hallway was empty. My friends gathered around, confused about why the light had come on. Then one of them whispered, "It is her." Through a large window that faced the backyard, we saw the woman standing outside, staring in at us. The moment she realized we saw her, she turned and ran. Shaken, we rushed back into the room and locked the door. None of us spoke much after that. We kept asking ourselves who she was and what she wanted. For over an hour, we sat awake, tense and alert. Eventually, exhaustion won, and we fell asleep. The next morning, my friend's mom told us the incident at the housing complex had frightened her so badly that she thought she saw the same woman standing over her bed during the night. We never told her that we had seen that woman outside the house. That left us with one disturbing thought. What if she really had been inside the house that night? Last year, Halloween fell on a Wednesday, and because of that, I ended up home alone. My dad works overnight shifts, and my mom was staying with her sister at the time, since my parents were not getting along. My sister was away at college, which meant it was just me at home, handing out candy to trick or treaters. My dad bought a couple of bags of Kit Kats and told me he expected every last one gone by the end of the night. For some reason, he takes Halloween very seriously. I did not get back from my classes until around 6 in the evening, and by then it was already dark with kids everywhere. The moment I dropped my backpack on the couch, the doorbell rang, and it kept ringing nonstop for hours. Later that night, once most of the trick-or-treaters had gone home, I sat down to work on homework. It was sometime after 9. I remember that clearly when the doorbell rang again. It was the first time it had rung in over 30 minutes. I walked to the door holding a nearly empty bowl of Kit Kats, expecting kids, but instead there was a single man standing there, probably around 35 years old. He gave me a small wave with a blank expression. I did not open the storm door. I just stared at him, prepared to slam the door shut if needed. He stopped waving and reached out for the handle, opening the storm door himself. I immediately slammed the main door, closed and locked it. I sent a message to my family group chat, saying some older guy just tried opening the door. My dad joked back that if he tried again, I should go outside and scare him off. That was enough for me. I decided I was done answering the door for the night and went upstairs to finish my homework. Not long after, I heard someone yelling outside. Eventually, my patience ran out, and I went to see what was happening. I opened my window and looked down, and there he was again, standing below and shouting up at me. He kept yelling that he needed help finding his son. I did not believe him at all. I messaged my family again, and my dad told me to ignore him and said he would leave eventually. I left my room and turned off the light, hoping that would make him go away. Then I went down into the basement, which had no windows, and stayed there to work. Everything stayed quiet for a while. Then suddenly, the power went out. My first thought was that the man outside had messed with the electric box. I stayed in contact with my family the entire time. A few minutes later, I heard the floorboards creaking above me. Someone was inside the house. My mom, dad, and sister all texted me at once telling me to call the police. I stayed in the basement, since it felt like the safest place. The police were already on their way, and all I had to do was wait. Then the basement door opened, and someone started coming down the stairs, stopping halfway. Even without power, enough light from upstairs reached the basement for me to see his legs. He stood there on the middle step for what felt like 2 full minutes. I heard him mumbling, though I could not understand a single word. After the longest and most uncomfortable moment of my life, the man spoke into the darkness and said he could see me. His legs were pointed directly toward where I was hiding. Was he staring at me that entire time? I did not move, and neither did he. He stayed there until there was a loud knock at the front door. Then he turned, went back up the stairs, closed the basement door, and I heard footsteps above me again. I waited about 20 seconds before running upstairs to the front door. By then, the man was gone. The police searched the area, but could not find him, even with my help. I later realized I had left the back door unlocked, so he walked right in. As for the power outage, he had tampered with the electric box outside, just like I thought. I still do not know if he chose Halloween on purpose, or if it was a coincidence, but there was clearly something wrong with that man. He did not belong wandering the streets. Halloween night. I cannot remember the exact year, but it was probably about 4 years ago, and it happened to fall on a Saturday. I will keep this brief and straight to the point. My friend Tanner and I were determined to do something frightening that night, and we decided that meant visiting the abandoned house far up the road from our campus. The house sat at the top of a hill, and some students called it the Blair Witch House because it stood completely alone on fenced-off land and it had been empty for years. Around 10 o'clock, Tanner drove us up the road and parked his car on the dirt near the property. We walked up the hill toward the house, and just seeing the dark, unlit building standing there sent chills through me. We both brought backpacks filled with supplies, such as flashlights, knives just in case, and Tanner even carried a crowbar. It turned out he did not need it, since the front door was already slightly open. That was when the flashlights became necessary, because the inside was pitch black. The house looked like it had been stripped of nearly everything. There was nothing left but scraps and trash, and nothing particularly interesting at first. Then we heard a loud thump coming from upstairs. Tanner and I both looked up, then at each other, and decided to head upstairs to see what it was. He went first, carefully climbing the stairs, which felt dangerously unstable. When we reached the top, there was a short hallway with 3 doors. We checked the first room, which was a small bedroom with an old bed frame collapsed in the corner. The second door on the left opened into an empty bathroom. The last door was on the right side of the hallway. We stepped inside, and it was clear this had been the main bedroom. A bed frame still sat in the middle of the room. The wooden floor showed signs that carpet had once covered it, but had been torn out over time. We walked further into the room, trying to figure out what caused the noise. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. At the same moment, a bright white flash filled the room, and another one followed. It looked exactly like camera flashes. Tanner yelled and threw the door open, bolting out of the room. I followed him immediately. Neither of us stopped to look for whoever else was there. We were far too terrified to think clearly. We sprinted back to the car, and Tanner drove us straight back to campus. About a week later, Tanner sent me a photo through a text message. In the image, he was holding a photograph. The photograph showed the 2 of us standing inside that bedroom. He told me the pictures had been left under his windshield wiper in the parking lot outside our dorm. I told him to get rid of them and to start parking somewhere else. We only shared the story with a few close friends. We never went anywhere near that house again.